up, everyone? Sega Fan 123 here to tell you that yes, it is that easy to play Sega Genesis games. The Sega Genesis, known as the Mega Drive in literally every continent except for ours, to many Americans it's probably the only thing you think of when you hear the name Sega. Well, after a certain blue marsupial. Outside the US, other Sega consoles and IPs seem to have significantly larger followings, especially the Saturn in Japan, but none of that matters now. We're talking about the Genesis today. Now, the Genesis is a 30-year-old console, and there are a lot of different ways to play its outstanding library to this very day. There were so many Sonic collections alone that it could be its own separate video. Spoiler warning, until Sonic Origins comes out, Sonic Jam is the best one. Anyway, today we're talking about Genesis re-releases, so let's take a look at them and see which one is the best. Now, I know some people are gonna say, just use an emulator, you can play that for free, to which I say, sure, cool, I'm not gonna stop you. Personally though, for me, I don't really get a lot of satisfaction out of playing games on my computer. It's like, cool, it's a video game, whereas in front of my TV with the controller in my hand, it's like, yeah, video games! Besides, this video is about official releases of Genesis games, so that's what I'm gonna talk about. First up is 6-Pack. Damn, they got right to the point with that name, didn't they? No SEGA Genesis 6-Game Super Collection, just 6-Pack. What am I supposed to do, drink it? Now the first thing to note is this is a Genesis collection released on the Genesis. Released in 1995 no less. Why wasn't this on the Saturn? Probably an attempt by Sega of America to squeeze some extra life out of the Genesis after dropping the ball with the Saturn's launch as hard as they did. Alright, so true to its name, we got 6 games on here, those being Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Columns, Revenge of Shinobi, and Super Hang-On. Not a bad selection, all things considered, but I find the choice of games a little strange at the same time. Just about every game in this collection is a significantly better sequel, so it makes you wonder why those weren't added instead. There are very few people out there who prefer Sonic 1 over Sonic 2, and you can say the exact same thing about Streets of Rage. Columns and Shinobi have similar sentiments, though I can at least give Columns the benefit of the doubt. Probably couldn't afford to use the likeness of Columns 3 guy a second time. Also, 6 games isn't a lot. I feel like it could stand to have at least one more game. I got it. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting. Anyway, being a collection of Genesis games on the same fucking console means no emulation was needed, so they play perfectly fine. Nothing out of the ordinary here, although I can't help but notice that Sonic Classics, which released a year later, uses the exact same menu as this. This was a collection that had Sonic 1, 2, and Mean Bean Machine on one cart. Yeah, this means that Sonic 1 was released on its original hardware 3 times. Holy shit! Interestingly, Europe got a slightly different version of this called Mega Game 6. It's more or less the same thing, except instead of Sonic, they got World Championship Soccer. Yeah, I think we got the better version. What's really weird, though, is that Europe got 2 more of these, with lineups that are only slightly different, but not completely. Columns is on all 3 of these. If you specifically want to play a bunch of Sega games on original hardware while you're on a budget, 6-Pack is by no means a bad choice. I got this complete in box with the manual for 18 bucks, so it's certainly a viable option. All these games are still relatively affordable on original hardware, but you're definitely saving a ton of money if you get this instead. Guess that means 6-Pack is still fulfilling its original purpose to this very day, and you know what? That's pretty cool. Next on our list is Sega Smash Pack Volume 1 for Dreamcast. There's no Volume 2, nor is there any evidence there were ever plans for one, so why is it called that? This was released exclusively in North America only a month before Sega dropped out of the console market. I'm not saying this game is responsible for it, but you can't deny it's suspicious. Wow, this is an extremely 90s looking menu. Anyway, let's give Sonic 1 a try. Sega! A joke. This is actually what the game sounds like, and the same goes for all the other Genesis games on here. Not to mention the half a second, no seriously, half a second of input lag that makes playing anything on here besides Phantasy Star 2 infuriating. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we found the Wii U ad campaign of Genesis collections.
Hot buttered popcorn, that's a deal!
Sorry, it's not just a Genesis collection, it also has Virtual Cop 2, a Saturn game that runs fine because it's a source port. It's actually the only North American Dreamcast game that works with a Dreamcast gun. There's also Sega Swirl, this puzzle game that was available on Dreamcast demo discs. Just press A on a bunch of different colored swirls and they disappear. I don't even think it's possible to lose this game. Yeah, this is really showing off what Windows CE is capable of, Sega. But above everything else, the most ridiculous thing about this collection has to be this text file found on the disc. It gives instructions on emulating Genesis games on the Dreamcast, and the file is titled Echelon, which was the name of the most prominent Dreamcast piracy group at the time. Let me repeat that. This is a licensed first-party SEGA game that encourages piracy. How did this game get released? But there was actually a second SEGA Smash Pack released a year and a half later on Game Boy Advance. It's only got 3 games, Sonic Spinball, Golden Axe, and Echo the Dolphin. What a weird selection. Not to mention the box is the cover art for Echo 2, so I'm sure that threw some people off when they bought it. Not much to say about this collection except screen crunch! Also, the sound is shit here too, but it's the GBA. You knew exactly what you were signing up for. General rule of thumb when it comes to Genesis re-releases is that if it wasn't released in Japan, run. Sega of America pumps these collections out about as fast as EA makes Madden games. Okay, maybe not that fast, but you get the idea. They're always about quantity over quality too. Each of these collections has different little quirks about them, but the one thing that holds true for each of them is the bad sound quality. When it comes to judging audio quality with Genesis emulation, I have a little something I like to call the signpost test. Basically, the signpost in Sonic games makes a sound that seems to be very difficult to emulate properly, so it makes a good benchmark. For example, here's what the signpost would sound like on an actual Genesis. Now here's what it sounds like on the Sonic Mega Collection. There are other examples such as the lasers in Sonic 3 or the select sound in the Streets of Rage games, but no matter which one you go with, all of these Sega of America made collections fail it. But let's take a closer look at them. Maybe there's a diamond in the rough. The Sega Genesis collection on PS2 and PSP looks promising. This one was made by Digital Eclipse, and their emulation in the Mega Man Legacy collection was wonderful, so I'm feeling optimistic. But hang on a second, this was a good 10 years before that collection, so this would be a completely different team. Oh well, let's see what we got. Now before we start with this one, I'd just like to note that this was released a mere 7 days before Sonic's reputation went down the toilet. This is the second Genesis collection to be released right before things go to shit for Sega. How did they time this twice? Looking at this right away, nothing says we had 5 minutes to make a logo more than this. The way it tries to look like the actual Genesis logo yet doesn't quite get it right makes it look even cheaper. The one on the title screen looks a lot better though. Now this is a logo I can get down with. So there are 28 games in this collection, which for the time was pretty incredible. At the time of its release, these games were all around 10 to 15 years old, so getting this many in one package was really cool. Solid lineup too, a decent amount of them are actually pretty good. And also the Genesis version of Virtua Fighter 2 is there, you know, the end-all be-all best version of the game. There's even a museum, and by museum, I mean a blurb about the game, tips that a 3-year-old could figure out on their own, and box art containing the front cover and the spine. Guess they couldn't afford the back, or the Japanese cover art for that matter. It's so weird too, because there's space for a third image there, and yet it's completely empty. This is a very awkward looking screen, and God forbid the game in question wasn't released in one region, because then it looks even more depressing. As for the games themselves, well, to start, the audio quality compared to the Sega Smash Pack is sex to my ears, but compared to an actual Genesis sounds like a choir of air horns going off at 3 in the morning. The sound is completely distorted. You know what? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. At least they're learning. Also, for some reason the color is strangely oversaturated. Like, I don't know about you, but this makes my eyes hurt. Hope the sound and color aren't bothering you too much though, because they're honestly the least of your worries. Input lag is back in full force, and it's somehow worse than the Sega Smash Pack. We are 2 for 2 on this. Part of me wants to give this collection some flack for being made in a time where retro collections were still kinda new, but the PS2 has a few collections that are a lot better than this one, so it's going exactly where it belongs. Oh, but wait! This wasn't the only Sega collection that was released on the PS2. There was one other, this one being handled by Sega of Japan. It's up to God they did a better job. The Sega Classics Collection was a collection of 3D remakes of several classic Sega titles under the Sega Ages moniker. The second time they've done this series after their first run on the Saturn, which I skipped over mostly because there weren't very many Genesis games on that lineup. Yeah, so we have Sega Genesis Collection for PS2 and Sega Classics Collection also for PS2. This just sounds like confusion waiting to happen. Imagine seeing the Sega Classics Collection with the all-new 3D graphics, so you tell Grandma that's what you want for Christmas, and instead she gives you the one with the box that looks like a middle school digital art class final. Like, at that point, I think I would have taken the socks. You could easily make the argument that since these are remakes rather than ports, this doesn't really count. And you know, I kinda agree, but if I didn't cover it, someone would complain in the comments. So here we go! So this collection is small-scale 3D remakes of Outrun, Space Harrier, Virtual Racing, Monaco GP, Taunt Arg, Bonanza Bros, Golden Axe, Columns, Fantasy Zones, and Alien Syndrome. Pretty faithful recreations of each game, only now with 3D graphics, though technically Virtual Racing always had 3D graphics, but that's beside the point. And then there's just this absolute dog shit remake of Golden Axe. Like, I don't care too much for the original game, but this here is just sluggish and painful to play, and probably the main reason the collection got such a bad score on Metacritic. I go into more detail, but it's probably better to save it for its own video so we can look at each title individually, but regardless, this is a neat little gem that's worth checking out. Okay, so next up is the Wii Virtual Console. Alright, I guess it isn't. Fuck you. Let's look at the PS3 instead. Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for PS3 and Xbox 360. Guess they feared it wouldn't sell if they didn't slap Sonic on the front. This one was made by Backbone Entertainment, formerly and currently known as Digital Eclipse. So yeah, it's the same guys as the PS2 collection. I hear people talk about this particular one as one of the best Genesis anthologies out there, but I kinda have my doubts. Now, the selection has increased significantly from the PS2 selection, though some games like Shadow Dancer didn't make the cut. Whoops. Of course, this collection promotes itself as the Ultimate Genesis Collection, and yet Puyo Puyo 2 and Gunstar Heroes are nowhere to be seen, so what is the fucking point? This collection's biggest flaw, however, is that it commits the ultimate sin of having Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and absolutely no way to play the whole package for some baffling reason. Seriously, you're missing out on like a quarter of the game because this collection outright denies you the ability to lock on. Also, this selection is exclusively first-party games, meaning some of the Genesis's best third-party titles like Castlevania Bloodlines and Mortal Kombat failed to make the cut. It's understandable because Sega would have to pay for additional licenses to make that work, but without them, it doesn't really live up to the ultimate name. I'm being nitpicky though, so let's take a look at what it actually does have to offer. Yeah, I do not like this menu. Don't get me wrong, it looks cool, but it's so cramped. I just feel like it'd be easier to navigate if you could see more of this list at once. You can read detailed bios on each game, and you can look at the cartridge and front cover of the manual, and by that, I mean the box art slapped on a template that's not necessarily accurate, and the cartridge is off-center for some reason. The whole thing comes off as cheap. Other extras include exclusive interviews and a small selection of arcade and Master System games, all of which have to be unlocked first. The interviews being unlockable makes sense, but I don't really like the idea of entire games having to be unlocked first. It just feels unnecessary. Plus, the requirements on some of these are a bit weird. To unlock Phantasy Star, you have to beat the first boss in Sonic 2 with 2 players? Shouldn't that requirement have something to do with the Phantasy Star games available? That would make a lot more sense to me. Plus, I'm shit out of luck because I only have one PS3 controller. I actually can't unlock it. Now, the sound quality for the games themselves is an improvement, but it's still not great. Most of the music sounds fine, but the sound effects are far more grating on the ears than they would be on original hardware, and it got annoying fast. At the end of the day, I'd be able to put up with it if it weren't for the goddamn input lag. It's still fucking here! Now, to be fair, it's significantly better than the last two collections, but you're still bound to notice it unless you've never played a Genesis game in your life. I've been playing the classic Sonic games for over 20 years, so if Sonic's mid-air control is even slightly off, I'll know. Also, hope you like borders, cause you can't turn them off. Each game has their own unique border, which is kinda cool, but they're all kinda ugly. Like, yeah, Sonic and Knuckles' border is hell with some rings. That sure makes me think of Sonic and Knuckles specifically. If you press select, you can make some adjustments like stretching out the picture to 16:9 or turning on a smoothing filter. If you're a monster, you can play the game like this. Hey, I'll give credit where credit's due, at least it made the border go away. Overall, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection is definitely an improvement, but it still feels a little cheap and shoddy. It's passable at best, but you can do a lot better. Moving on. Okay, so after all that, it was Sega Europe's turn to give the whole Genesis Collection thing a try. Introducing the SEGA Genesis Classics Collection, developed by D3T. Released gradually on Steam from 2010 to 2012 and in 2018 on Switch, PS4, and Xbox One, this collection boasts that it has 50 games in one for the low price of $30. Amazing! Incredible! What's the catch? I couldn't tell you why, but every time a game starts with a loading screen like this, I always get a bad feeling, like something about it feels very off. But hey, it's got all our favorite Sega characters like Sonic the Hedgehog, Gunstar Red, Axel Stone, Joe Musashi, the gem from Columns? That's a character now. Anyway, it starts with this opening cinematic featuring various Genesis characters destroying their respective cartridges? What am I looking at here? God, I don't like this music. Yeah, the first thing I think of when I see the Genesis is fucking rave music. Okay, this menu's neat. It's like the bedroom of a Sega fan in the early 90s. Gonna cry foul though because Sonic 3D Blast is here and that implies that whoever's room this is would most likely have a Saturn by now. Okay, let's not kid ourselves, a PlayStation. Selecting your games by sorting through this shelf is neat and all, but it's a little disorienting, and it really takes you out of it when every single game uses the earlier black graph paper design, even if the actual box uses the later red box design. But we're not here to harp on menus, we're here to talk about the games. Gunstar Heroes is here this time, alright, we're learning, but Puyo Puyo 2 is still nowhere to be seen. Also, Sonic 3 and Knuckles isn't available in the console versions due to them being released way after the legal issues surrounding that game reared their ugly mug. Also, if you got the Switch version, you're missing out on the Wonder Boy games too for some reason. Alright, so you can also turn on a CRT filter, choose your border. I went with the Streets of Rage one because I love this damn cityscape. And for some games, you can play online multiplayer, which is a nice addition. That's nice and all, but how do the games play? While the half second of input lag is still here, I'm not joking. How is it that we're 5 Genesis collections in, and the only one to not have input lag is the one that's on the fucking Genesis? It has been 18 years since the Sega Smash Pack, and the input lag is still just as bad as it was back then. Why is this still here? Several games are borderline unplayable with it, and that just makes the whole thing less fun for everyone. What makes this even more ridiculous is that Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection's input lag, while not ideal, was still an improvement over its predecessors, and then this collection has the audacity to go back? The confusion is giving me a headache. As for the audio quality, it's better. It sounds very close to the actual hardware, but something about it sounded ever so slightly off, and I couldn't tell what it was, and it was really bugging me. Started thinking it was maybe my imagination. Then it failed the signpost test. See, it's all coming together. And that wasn't all. Sometimes certain sounds fail to play at all, and a few times shit like this happened. What the fuck is going on here? Alright, I know I'm overblowing this a bit, but it's just that in the year 2018, I expect the emulation quality for an official Sega Genesis collection to be held to a higher standard than this. Something this does have going for it is its cheap price and large number of games. If you think the quality is worth it for fucking Decap Attack, I can't stop you. I strongly believe you can do a lot better, and I refuse to call this the definitive option for Genesis games, but on the other hand, you really can do a lot worse. Let's just move on. Next up is SEGA 3D Classics on Nintendo 3DS. Not to be confused with Nintendo's own 3D Classics series on the same platform, nah, this is something else entirely. This is a collection of various Genesis, Master System, and Sega arcade games, all with stereoscopic 3D effects. It was developed by M2, who could best be described as, yeah, they're pretty cool. Actually though, they're some of the absolute best when it comes to porting classic games. Like, the moment you see this name, you know you're in for something good. Sadly, several games were not released outside Japan, even more so when you factor in the physical collection releases. Unfortunately, due to the 3DS being region-locked, the Japan-only collections will not work on an American or European system. This means you either need to mod your hardware or import another console, neither of which are exactly what I'd call ideal. Japan got 3 of these, but we only got the second one. A lot of my favorite Sega classics are only available on Volume 3, but since Volume 3 wasn't released outside Japan, I can't play them without mods or imports. Mostly mods though, because even in Japan, good luck getting this. Still, these are nice to have, and this box art is spectacular. It was drawn by Pokemon artist and massive Sega fan Ken Sugimori, which you can kinda tell by looking at Aurel here. She is very blatantly drawn in Pokemon's art style. I'm just imagining her saying, "Go Carbuncle, use Lick!" All of the games on here have various enhancements over the original versions, such as giving Sonic the Spin Dash in Sonic 1, which is useful in Green Hills, Starlight, and nowhere else. This is probably the ideal way to play Genesis games on the go, so if that's your thing, get on this ASAP! You only have so much time before the 3DS eShop shuts down! As for wanting to play this on the TV though, well, let's move on. If you have a Switch, Sega revived the Sega Ages lineup for the console. This is pretty much the same thing as Sega 3D Classics, only it doesn't have 3D, which I mean, let's be honest, was more of a bonus than anything else. Once again, this was developed by M2 and contains various Genesis, Master System, and arcade games. They even said Saturn and Dreamcast games may be a possibility if it does well, so in true piecemeal fashion, it was an absolute flop. Ironically, it did significantly better overseas than it did in Japan, despite Sega and M2 projecting the opposite results. Really goes to show that Sega barely pays attention to their non-Japanese demographics above all else. Games include Sonic 1 and 2, Puyo 1 and 2, Thunder Force 4, Outrun, Alex Kidd, Collins 2, a game no one knew existed, Phantasy Star, and several others, and they all include several enhancements. In addition to the Spin Dash in Sonic 1, Sonic also has access to the Drop Dash from Sonic Mania. Knuckles is also playable in Sonic 2, something you could previously only do by locking on Sonic and Knuckles. Puyo Puyo has a quick turn ability that wasn't a thing until its sequel, in addition to the very obscure arcade translation that for the longest time many thought to be a bootleg. Several Master System games have FM quality audio that was initially exclusive to their Japanese versions but are available on all versions here, and Phantasy Star gets this extremely helpful map so you won't get lost while dungeon crawling. These are by and far the definitive versions of each of these games, with the only exceptions being Sonic 1 and 2, and that's only because Sonic Origins and the mobile remasters exist. The selection may be a little small, but if you're a SEGA fan, SEGA Ages is absolutely worth your time. Alright, so next up is the Genesis Mini. The Genesis Mini was released in 2019 to capitalize on the hype of plug-and-play mini consoles, of which I have all except the PlayStation Classic. You ever think about the fact that Nintendo only made these to hold people over until the Switch launched and ended up starting an industry fad in the process? The emulation was handled by you already know who, so let's jump right in. It comes with 40 Genesis games and 2 bonus arcade games, those being Darius and Tetris, the latter of which got recalled after releasing in Japan due to licensing issues, though this isn't that version, but rather the arcade version, which supposedly plays a lot better. Game selection on this system is outstanding. It has almost every noteworthy Genesis game on it, including a couple bad ones. Most notably, it's home to one of the only re-releases Castlevania Bloodlines ever got, and most incredible of all, Mega Man The Wily Wars. So this game was released on cartridge in Japan and Europe, but in North America it was only released through the SEGA Channel, a subscription service that allowed people to download games. The service ended in 1998, meaning the American version of The Wily Wars was lost to the tides of time. Until the Genesis Mini, that is! Yeah, it turns out Capcom had still held on to the American ROM this whole time, meaning it's finally playable again. This is by far the best way to play Genesis games that have been plagued with slowdown too. The emulator used for this has been overclocked to eliminate as much slowdown as possible. Look at that man move! This needs to become a standard feature for old re-releases. It's so nice to have. The only real downsides to the Mini are a supposed audio delay that's so faint I genuinely can't notice it unless I pay stupidly close attention, and far more notably, the price. The Mini initially ran for $80 with occasional sales here and there, but as far as I'm aware, it's currently at a print, meaning you're gonna be paying a bit more than you'd like for it if you don't already have one, but it's not completely out of reach yet. If you really want it, save up. If you don't want to pay more than retail price, well, let's look at some more options. You know, like it's a strange bastard half-brother, the Genesis flashback by Acting. Yeah, we all know it sucks, but would you believe it still manages to have better audio quality than the Sega Smash Pack? Hang on, what's that? What the fuck do you mean they're making a Mega Drive Mini 2? It is Sega CD games? I had to mod mine for that! You know what? No, fuck it. I've been working on this video for 6 goddamn months now. I'm not delaying it again. I'll probably still buy it though. Alright, so there's one last thing to look at today, and it's SEGA Genesis for Nintendo Switch Online. So as you all know at this point, Nintendo offered an expansion pack for the Nintendo Switch Online program, containing N64 games, an expansion for Animal Crossing that you could buy separately, Mario Kart 8 DLC, and to the surprise of some, SEGA Genesis games, all for the very enticing price of $50 a year! Yeah, at that point, that money could probably be best spent elsewhere. Maybe buy a whole bunch of sandwiches, like way too many sandwiches. You gotta be feeling pretty sick the next day, but money well spent, I guess. Supposedly this was to cover the costs of adding Genesis games in the first place. Turns out Virtual Console sales weren't actually that good, and Sega wanted to guarantee they'd get more out of NSO than they did from Virtual Console. Naturally, people weren't happy, especially when it turned out that the N64 emulation came with several hiccups ranging from minor graphical issues to Ocarina of Time having very noticeable input lag. Of course, it's N64 emulation, so this shouldn't be a surprise. Even unofficial emulators have been struggling with the console's unusual architecture that makes playing any game that's not called Super Mario 64 frustrating. But hold on, this video is about the Genesis, so let's talk about that instead. To get straight to the point, it's perfect. No input lag, no oversaturated picture, audio quality's good. Did they get M2 for this? Yes, they did! Yeah, this is honestly about as good as the Genesis Mini. Only real downside is the lack of a button configuration. You either buy their specialized controller or live with what regular controllers give you, though to be fair, unless the game requires the 6-button pad, this shouldn't be a huge deal. The lineup is still fairly small, but they really brought out the big boys right away here, and you know there's gonna be more games in no time. We actually managed to get some more prolific third-party games, mainly from Konami. Guess the increased price point meant more profit for them too, so I'd imagine there will be less bottom of the barrel here than the NES and SNES packs. Honestly, I don't blame you if you don't want to spend $50 for this, but there is a way you can make this cheaper for yourself. All you gotta do is get 7 friends, preferably trustworthy ones, and start a family plan. Split the bill evenly and watch a $50 annual fee turn into $10. Suddenly you're paying a hell of a lot less for this. Sounds like a good deal if you ask me. There are a lot of ways to play Genesis games, but it's a tad concerning that only a few of them are actually good. Ultimately, whichever one is best for you depends on your priorities. If you're trying to save money and don't particularly care about quality, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection on the PS3 and 360 is probably the best choice. If you do care about quality, stay the hell away from anything that wasn't released in Japan. If you deliberately want to play something terrible, get SEGA Smash Pack on Dreamcast because it'll deliver and then some.
Yo, what's up guys? Nintendo Fan 69 here, and yes, it is just that easy to play SEGA Genesis games.